My name is Alan, and welcome to the Sound Speeds Podcast, Episode 8. I got a haircut, or as I refer to it, my quarterly fleecing. And I know to get my fleecing because my wife looks at my hair and says, it's time for you to get a haircut. So I go around the corner to the barbershop I've gone to for the past few years. I sit down in Brittany's chair and I let her do her thing. And by now, she knows me because it took about a year for me to get my hair dialed in on basically the way I wanted it to be. Is this style? No. What this is take it down to low enough where I don't have to come back for about 3 months. Otherwise, it's going to be too long and it's probably going to start driving me crazy after about a week. So normally, if I take it down this low, then it's probably pretty good for about 3 months. And so I like this because if it's any shorter, it's probably going to be like a Charlie Brown style bald haircut. But regardless, I'm going to be very cold this fall and winter because my hair is this short going into the season changes. It is Saturday, November 2nd, 2019. Let's get into it. Amazon impulse buys. About a month and a half ago, I was walking backwards, booming someone in a walk and talk when I stepped on a fairly large stone and it went right to the arch of my foot, kind of hurting it. Now, that obviously was not something I liked, but one of the things that started to happen is my foot started to kind of feel like I had socks pulled up around the top of the arch or the ball of the foot. And I know that's not the case, but it felt that way regardless. So even when I had my shoe on and I pulled my socks very, very straight with no wrinkles in it, it felt like that. Now, I did go to a podiatrist last Thursday, Halloween, but I'll avoid going any farther with that for right now. But one of the things I did do in order to kind of self-medicate and kind of get it back in order is I bought myself one of these foot massagers. Now, this thing, I've never owned one of these, but I tell you, this Renfo is what it's called, and it always reminds me of Robert Downey Jr.'s character in the movie Bowfinger. Jerry Renfro is, I believe, what it was. But this thing right here, I tell you, it had great reviews on Amazon, and I know why. It has a bunch of different features on it, and I'm sorry I'm popping the mic. It has a time. You can set it for either 15 or 30 minutes. You have 3 different degrees of intensity. And this does knead and kind of go up and down the bottom of the foot and the sides of the foot. And there's 3 different degrees of tension that it puts on. It also has this thing called air intensity. Now, what that does is there's 3 levels of that too. And depending on how you do it, it will blow air into the side of it. So that way it compresses around your foot. And that way when it needs, it seems to put more pressure on there. And right now I can do kneading intensity about high, and I could do medium on air intensity because anything higher than that, and it feels really bad. And then the last thing is heat, and the heat does a pretty good job too, but I was advised by my wife to avoid the heat right now, so I usually turn that off as soon as I hit the power button. It does have a feature here where you can remove this sock that kind of goes around your foot when it's inside, and you can wash them. You just basically pull it right off, and it goes right in the wash, and you can wash it, and it's just fine. And it does have a wall wart, so you need to make sure that there's about 3 places, 3 slots there on your power strip, unless you plug it directly into a wall. Otherwise, it's going to be kind of big and take up a bunch of space. Or you can get one of those little short, extension things that plugs onto a wall wart and then goes right in, regardless. But I tell you, this little thing right here has helped to restore some blood flow in my foot. It helps me when I edit at night, doing any of my sound speeds edits. And basically, if I return emails or whatever I'm doing, this little thing right here is almost always going on my feet. It's quiet. So if I join voice chat in Discord or something like that, it's not going to be very loud at all. And people don't even notice it. It doesn't even trip my gait. So it's pretty awesome. I highly recommend them if you have never gotten such a thing. This right here has made it so that way I don't start my day off limping. I'm usually limping by the end of the day, to be completely honest, but that's because I'm on my feet for like 15 hours every single day. And with exception of the collapsible stool, which I showcased, I believe it was last week, I normally don't sit down very much. And I only started doing it recently because my foot has been bothering me. But this little doodad right here and getting off my feet occasionally with that collapsible stool has been very, very good for me. So if you don't have anything like this thing actually does a great job, and I highly recommend getting something like this. There's a link in the description if you'd like to check it out. Something sound. I'm normally very picky about the products that I review on SoundSpeeds. I'm sent invitations constantly to test out new gear, and most of the time I say no. I don't even bother responding anything more than that. I just say the word no. And most of the time, they know to leave me alone, and sometimes they'll say, well, why not? And then I'll give them a little bit more of an explanation. And most of the time, usually it's a USB microphone. And as you know, I have no interest in reviewing any of those. So this company here does earbuds. And as you know from having watched my channel in the past, I don't find it very easy to test out earbuds, earphones, any type of thing that is listening, because listening is a very personal experience and everybody listens different and has different preferences. Some people like to have more bass. Some people like it to be completely flat. Some people just will have blown out their hearing in different ways over the course of the years, and they don't really have very much sensitivity to the highs, and they want it to be boosted in the highs. Whatever the case may be, I am usually someone that's fairly picky about my headphones. And so when this company said, we'd like you to test these earbuds, I responded one word, no. And then about a week later, they sent me another message. And again, I sent one word, no. Now, when the messages first started coming to me, they had broken links. The pictures weren't showing up. There was bad English. And I just was like, I don't know who this company is, but leave me alone. So over the course of time, I continued to respond no. And then after a while, they started sending me and 79 other content creators on YouTube this same exact email. And when that happened, we all looked at it and said, oh, good. Now we are on a list where you can't even send us an individual personalized email invite. You have to send it out and spam it out to all of us. And they could do it a couple of times a week because there were two different people contacting at least me. And that annoyed me. And so what I started doing is what I do best, and that is trolling. No, it's not sound. It is trolling. So I started mocking, joking, making fun, and the company was still resilient and continued to contact me. So after a while, I said, you know what? I just want this company to be done with me. So I said, okay, fine. I will review your product. If you send it to me, I will review it on the podcast, and then I will, release that same thing as a Something Sound segment on SoundSpeeds. And originally when I responded, the person did not contact me back. And so I figured, okay, well, apparently she must not be interested after all. Maybe it's because at the time of this video, I only have about 4,350 subs, or it was closer to 4,000 at the time. I was like, maybe that's not enough for him. Who knows? But regardless, I said, okay, well, not going to let it dampen my spirits because I'm just, got other things going on and there's other videos I want to do anyway. So they sent me another message. And it was the other person who I said, oh, well, last time I responded and said I was willing to do it, and you didn't bother sending me anything back. And she said, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get that message. Then I looked it up, and it was indeed the other person that I had sent the message to. So I said, oh, I see, it was someone else. Here was the reply that I sent. She was very willing to send me the product, but not really the traditional way that people will send a product to you. You review it and you have to give your disclaimer. What she did is said, if you buy the product, I will reimburse you. And this is one thing that some people do now in order to try to avoid the disclaimer that the FCC requires you to do that tells you that this is, they want you to say it's sponsored or whatever the case may be. So I will go ahead and say right now, this product was sent to me, or rather they reimbursed me for this product. And so they cover the cost of it, including shipping, sent to me. In exchange for a fair review, I do get to keep it after this. So there you go. Now, I'm not going to let this change my opinion of this product in any way, shape, matter, or form. Now, let me get into this here, because I am not overly familiar with wireless Bluetooth earbuds. But what I can say is I put these on tonight and gave them a test. Now I'll tell you about my thoughts and results about them in a little bit. These are the Monster Clarity 101 Airlinks Bluetooth wireless in-ear headphones. It says on the back here a bunch of information about it. This is the way the box looks. And if you open it up, it has, sponge stuff, and it has, the little thing right there with the charging cable that came in it. It had extra little earbuds that you can size for small, medium, and large, because it's the little mushroom tips that you put around your ear, depending on the size of your ear canal. And it has the instruction manual, which I will say is kind of interesting because it's fairly thick. But if you look at it, there is only this, that, and that is in English. Then it goes to the next language. And so it only gives you 3 little bitty pages of information. The English is actually good on it, which is kind of surprising for a company that is based out of China. And what I will say also is they're very intuitive. They just work. So let me actually show them to you. This here, you open it up and you can see that it's on right now because I had it on a little while ago and I was listening to them. Now, when I tested them tonight, what I did is I simply pulled them out. They came to life. And when they came to life, I put them in my ear and I brought up my Bluetooth on my phone and I saw Clarity 101. I hit the button and it paired with it in probably about 1.5 seconds. And unlike other Bluetooth headphones, you've heard me test, like the ones that we found a couple weeks ago, these, once they connected in both ears at the same time, it said pairing, connected. And I was like, wow, okay, so it wasn't like this ear is talking to me and this ear is talking to me and they were just completely mismatched or whatever else. And that was something that I was very, very impressed by. Then I started to actually, try to figure out how to get them in my ear because, being a typical guy, I don't really want to look in the manual and try to figure things out. I want to see how intuitive it is because I am a sound guy. And if I can't figure it out, then who knows what, I don't know what to think if I can't even figure out consumer earbuds. Well, what I have come to learn is, if you kind of give it a little bit of a quarter twist or something like that, it will find your ear fairly well. Now, personally, I think that this may be sized a little bit big for my ear, and I don't know that for a fact, but it does have other sizes in there, and I could end up finding it if I want to. Now, this does plug up the ear, so that way the bass response is actually pretty good. So is the highs. As a matter of fact, what I did is I, first of all, brought up a couple of music videos that I like, and I watched them, and I'm hearing imperfections in the editing of those music videos, whether it has some speech and then it goes into the music videos. Like one of the ones I did was Barbie Girl by Aqua because my daughter seems to really like it, my 3-year-old. Yes, I share all kinds of interesting things. Another one that I did was First of the Year by Skrillex because I wanted to hear how digital bass punches and pumps. I listened to Daft Punk, listened to Around the World. That was originally mastered in analog, uploaded to YouTube, and then it's analog out there, but it streams out digitally. And if it was originally mastered on an analog, it sounds different when it was converted to digital, and I can hear that. I also decided to play Macklemore Thrift Shop. I wanted to hear the bass response. So I did Whoop There It Is and Tootsie Roll, which are very, very low bass things, which when I used to DJ, I would just go blasting those things and you would shake the ceiling tiles and they would start breaking up and stuff like that. It's pretty awesome. Now, as I was going through various different songs and just listening to it, including Robin Scotteris, something like that. I forgot what it is. Pop Love number 3, which I tell you what, I'll put a link to this down in the description below because Robin does a bunch of great mashups of the yearly top songs. And Pop Love number 3 is my absolute favorite of the series. And so listening to that, I hear a whole bunch of different artists, and I'm also able to hear in the different things I'm listening to the edits. Most of the time when I listen to things, it does not have that kind of fidelity. Most of the time when you listen on some sort of a listening device, whether it's headphones or whatever else, it is pretty much, you don't normally hear those things because it doesn't have the fidelity to pull them out. And another thing is when you hit pause on whatever video you're watching, the noise floor is very low. If you sit there and let it idle for a bit, it doesn't make noise, squeal, any of that kind of stuff. The noise floor remains low. As soon as you hit play again, it instantly picks up. It doesn't have to reconnect or go into a standby mode when it is not in use. So I personally thought that was a really cool thing too. The bass is actually punchy, but it's not overdone. If it's Bose, then you know how it is when I did my Bose Soundware Companion review. The first thing I did is I was like driven crazy by the bass. So I had to reduce that without using the app. So that way I could use it on any device I wanted to, and it was going to sound the way I wanted it to. And With these, they're actually pretty natural. It does have low and punchy bass. It does pick up very nice in the mids and highs. And I did decide to also do a frequency sweep. Unfortunately, though, YouTube rolls off any frequencies above 16,000 hertz. So as soon as I started at 20 hertz, I heard those frequencies. It definitely picked up in the wireless earbuds. And then it rolled off just before 16,000 hertz and it went off. Then I decided to go online and I brought up one of my favorite tone generator sites and started playing around there. And it does indeed go higher. But since I'm in my 40s, I have started to lose some of my hearing above 17K. So I didn't hear much above that. But it did do a great job of presenting me with whatever frequencies I put through it. On the frequency sweep, what you normally listen to is how the volume changes up and down and how, as it starts to transition, as it goes from lows to highs. Now, these are probably single driver, meaning that it is one kind of speaker that pumps out the sound. If it was multiple driver, then you might have one for lows, one for mids, one for highs, maybe multiples for lows, something like that. And that's where you really get out your fidelity. If you use high-end IEMs like from Empire or Ultimate Ears, something like that, then you're going to really hear much more depth and fidelity because not only are they wired, but they also have multiple drivers. But these actually did a fairly good job of transitioning from one frequency to the other. As a matter of fact, I didn't even notice it. Now, sometimes as you start to transition from the lower frequencies and around the cutoff frequency area, which would normally be between about 200 hertz and maybe about 500 hertz, because that would be where it would start to route into the subwoofer, depending on how big the subwoofer is. If you start to do that, and the transition point from there to the mid-range, and then from the mid-range to tweeters, normally what you'll start to hear is a fade out and then a fade in from when the frequencies pick up, and you'll hear it, and sometimes it starts to almost strain. It almost sounds like it's squealing and having a hard time. This didn't do any of that. It did a really good job of seamlessly connecting all the different frequencies together without really adjusting the audio level at all. It does not overly boost the lows, the mids, or the highs. People sound very natural. And when I listen to myself on sound speeds, it actually sounded like my voice. And unfortunately, I heard some of my edits. So, but that was actually a good thing because it was high enough quality for me to do that. So personally, I kind of regret the fact that I kind of made fun of the company and pestered one of the employees or probably both of the employees that contacted me for a while. And so I do apologize about that because these little earbuds, I'll tell you, I don't know a whole lot about earbuds, but these are actually really good. I don't know why that's still blue right there. I mean, it's probably something that, oh, it's off. Well, it's probably trying to pair right now. But if I were to close this up, does it go out? I don't know. But what I will tell you is that if you plug it in there, it does a really good job of charging up. If I press that little button, like, and you can't really tell it as is a button right there, those and those. Let me press and hold it real quick and see if it turns off. There it goes, turns off. So what came back on? I don't know. Is that supposed to be the other side? Maybe that's the right. I don't know. Oh, it's because I didn't line it up right. Maybe. I don't know. But what I will tell you is the fidelity is really good. If you press and hold the left button, you press that little button on the left, it does volume down. If you press it on the right side, it does volume up. And I did decide to look at the manual after I've kind of played with them for a little bit. Very simple. They're straightforward and they do their job. Their range is good because I was listening to them and I went downstairs to throw something in the trash can and I came back upstairs and it's only about 25 feet away, but it is through walls and I didn't lose signal at all. And Bluetooth is normally line of sight up to maybe about 40 feet. I think they normally say it's about 33. But these, I tell you, did a really good job. They retail for $80 and you can get them for $80 on Amazon. And as far as Bluetooth headphones go, I'll tell you this. I listened to a lot more things than I probably needed to in order to get my impression of them. And I'm going to probably listen to them quite a bit more because I was pretty impressed by them. So as far as I'm concerned, these monsters right here get a 5-star rating from me. And I will probably go on Amazon and give it that kind of a review as well. So definitely keep that in mind if you're in the market for Bluetooth earbuds. because I actually was pretty impressed by them. And I don't know if I already showed this, but these are the different sizes of the mushroom tips, and this is the little charging cable that goes to a micro USB. And so you basically plug it in the back here, and uh, it magically just starts charging up. As soon as you take them out, it's ready to pair. So you just take them out and it instantly connects up to your phone if you press the little button for them. So they're very good. I really appreciate it. And in case you're curious, it is Bluetooth 5.0 and it says 25 hours with charged case. I think I saw someplace that it was good for like 10 hours of AirPlay, something like that. But it says 25 hours with charged case right here. But I don't know. What I will tell you though is I like them. Opinionated much? One of the things that annoys me is the fact that it is 2019 at the time of this video, and we still have noisy fans. There is no reason that fans should still be noisy considering that we have had them now for decades and decades and decades. And they're always the same. You have a motor that starts spinning up and it goes. Now, I understand that fans typically have to chop the air up, and in doing so, it's going to make a little bit of sound. But there's now different types of fans that you can get that are bladeless, supposedly. But I think all that does is it creates the fan on the inside, and then it shoots out little bitty holes. Now, I'm not 100% sure about that. But what I do know is that there is technology now being used on windmills where you take a circle and it makes like this ring around the windmill itself, and it's kind of shaped like a funnel. The reason why is because by being open on one end, the end that's facing outwards, that the wind blows through it and goes out through the wider opening. When you have a wider opening like that and the windmill is blowing into that, the air starts to kind of spread outwards. It gets thinner. And as it starts to lower the pressure on the front side of it, it draws and pulls more air through. So because it's a cone shape like this, if you could imagine, it starts to accelerate the air going through there to make it more efficient. That means that it doesn't need to be as powerful and as fast because it will naturally pick up the pace on it itself. It's more efficient, it keeps itself going longer and creates more power. What I'm curious is why we can't do something like that regarding the fans we have on our computers. Because most of the time we're on set and we have these e-fans where they turn them on and they go, and they're loud. Now, I get sometimes you might need to accelerate air really, really fast, like with a jet engine or something like that for a big special effects scene. Okay, fine, I get it. The big Ritter fans that are 4 or 5 feet in diameter and just blow everything in the world, give it a snow or a rain look, just blowing things sideways. And by the way, I am talking about in the film industry because that's where I work. In those kind of environments, I understand. But when it comes down to computer fans, when it comes down to typical fans that you have on set or in devices like Teradeks or cameras, there is no reason why those fans should be loud. If you're in a vocal booth or anything, then you're probably going to want to have some sort of a fan in there, and you'll notice that the larger the blades are, the larger the fan is, the lower it can be and the more air it moves. So that way you don't, if you have a little bitty tiny fan and you want to have a lot of air output, that thing has to turn up really, really loud in order to blow your face and cool you down. If you have a bigger fan that's, let's say, a box fan like this, you can turn it to the lowest setting. It's not going to be pumping as much with the motor, and it's going to cool you much more efficiently. So the bigger it is, the more it's going to cool, and the quieter it will be. But right now, I can't help but wonder why we don't have more efficient fans. It's 2019. Someone needs to come up with better fans on gear. Doesn't matter what that is, because the world is getting more and more noisy. Every single time you go someplace, into an office building, for example, just pause and listen to the world around you. You're going to hear copy machines. You're going to hear the fans on the computer. You're going to hear the fans on the air handlers in your building and the air conditioning or the heater, depending on the time of year. You're going to hear all the fans on everything in the entire floor. Even in your house, you have a condensation or a compressor rather, on your refrigerator downstairs. And that's understandable because it is a machine that's functioning. But then you have the central air blowing air through your house. On your car, when you get into the car, it blows air on you. I don't think that you need to have as noisy fans as you do. because right now in the world that we're living in, the noise floor has gotten up to a higher level than it was only a couple of generations back. I know that a lot of people worked in very loud environments because they didn't have OSHA standards for things like, if you worked in a mine, ear protection was not a requirement back then. And if you worked in some sort of a warehouse with handling steel, you probably blew out your ears by the time you were in your 40s, my age, if you had any hearing at all. So I get that. OSHA has done a good job of helping people protect their ears due to loud volumes and that kind of thing. But the world has gotten even louder. Cars are all over the place. We have televisions, music, people always on their phones, listening to earbuds, and those are getting louder and louder and louder because you got to hear over the outside world. Even if it has noise canceling, people usually have a tendency of turning them up louder than they need to in order to hear. That's blowing out your ears earlier, and by the time you get to be as old as your great-grandparents, if they're still alive, or grandparents if they're not, then you're probably not going to have nearly as good a hearing as they do, and they are probably hard of hearing. So it is my opinion that we need to have better fans. Scientists out there, anybody who's developing anything, develop a better fan, one that's more efficient at routing air through it and with lower RPMs or with lower motor and voltage and whatever else. So that way the fan is not nearly as loud. And let's try to quiet down this world a bit. So that way it's not going to completely destroy our hearing by the time we are at retirement age. Wrong answers only. Cinderella asks, how do you clean a lavalier microphone? Oh, that's a great question for this segment. Now, let me preface this by saying that in the film industry, we constantly use products not for their intended purpose. For example, if you want to clean off the surface of a slate, which is the clapper boards that you see, scene 4, take 3, clap. If you want to clean one of those, we typically will use Rain-X as a weapon of last resort if nothing else works, because it will. If you want to keep rain off of a transmitter in the rain, to be redundant, then you would perhaps use an unlubricated condom and so forth. Now, if you want to clean a lavalier microphone, they have a rubber casing on the outside. And the typical best way to do that is by going to a pool supply company, a place that you would buy cleaning supplies for your home swimming pool. If you want to get one of those long nets or if you need to get some chemicals, and that is actually what we're there for. There is something they sell that is called pool cleaning solution, and it is strongly acidic. Muriatic acid is the main thing in there, which is 31.45% hydrochloric acid. Now, if you were to take your lavalier microphone and stick every bit of it, except obviously the connector or the element at the end of it, into a cup, you would tape the element and you would tape the connector to the side. And so that way, the level that it needs to be at if you were to fill it with some of this muriatic acid. You fill it up so that way the element is not going to be touched by the acid, neither is the connector, but the entire cable is. Let it soak for a good 2 or 3 minutes. In doing so, it's going to be very gooey. It's going to be able to be cleaned off very well. If you simply pour out the muriatic acid, you take it, you run it underneath some water, perhaps even pour some water into the cup, swish it around, and that should be a great cleaning solution that will do wonders for your cable. Now, what about the actual tip itself? Well, you've heard about baking soda and vinegar. One of the best solutions that you can do is take a tablespoon of baking soda, put it into a cup, or a bowl, saucer, something like that, pour some vinegar in there and let it start to create this foaming effect. Take the end of your capsule and stick it in there, swishing it around a little bit, and you obviously want to stick it in there and tilt it upwards so that way it can get all the way on the inside there. Let it sit in there for a good couple of minutes, and all that foaming and bubbling will come to the surface, and it will tell you that it's cleaning. So if you take that out and then you simply rinse that under your tap water, it's going to be great. Now, as for your connector itself, that is just one of those things that if you simply just put it underneath your faucet, it should do just fine. If you do this as a routine, anytime you need to really clean off your cable, then that should be a great way to maintain everything and make sure it's done really well. Even if your element is not waterproof, don't worry about that. It's going to clean just fine if you do this. So remember the muriatic acid, remember the baking soda and vinegar, and then obviously tap water underneath your sink. What's that going to hurt? So that is the best solution you can have. Now, if you need a quick solution because perhaps somebody's sweaty and you need to wipe it down to get all their sweat off because they have a wardrobe change or something like that, and you want to make it cleaned up for them, then the best thing to use there is Lysol wipes. Once you do that, just Lysol the thing all the way down and then all the way back up, and then put it right on their skin. It shouldn't irritate it or anything like that. So that's a few solutions for you for how to clean a lavalier microphone. Keep that in mind. Story time. Now, I talked earlier about fans and the need for better fans. Now, let me tell you about a couple of adventures that I have had in trying to quiet down fans on set. Fans drive me crazy because my sound mixer hears them. I don't want to hear them. And there's been sometimes I've gone on location and they've said, we can't possibly shut this fan down. This printer, this copier, whatever has to stay on for whatever reason. Okay, fine. If it has to stay on, then the fans are really, really loud. What you can do is try to baffle it. You can, put something like doubled over Duvetine on it and try to just tape it around the edges and stop it from actually pushing it out air. That will sometimes drive it into a higher pitched sound. Sometimes it does indeed quiet it down. But the better solution I have is one that we used a few years ago when trying to quiet down one at a hospital. They had this very, very loud fan on this copy machine, and it was just driving us absolutely crazy because it was overly loud. Normally, copy machines aren't this loud. We tried baffling it. We tried putting some from even a Fernie pad even on the back, but we doubled over some Duvetine, tried putting it on the back, and it amped it up even more. It was like, oh, I'm being smothered here. I need to amp up my fan and be even louder. So that obviously didn't work out very well. And I tried getting with locations who got with our site rep and said, can we please shut this thing down? It's driving our sound department crazy. And they said, no, the copy machine has to stay on. I'm sorry about that. So what I did is I grabbed a paper clip. I went to the back of the little fan and I clipped it to the side of the fan, jamming it up and stopping it. So what ended up happening is it went for a little while and then it burned itself out. Now, when you stop the fan from going, it actually, goes a little bit for a little while, and then it fried itself out and it ceased to work. And I was really happy about that. So at the end of the day, I always remember to pick up my stuff. If you watch the 3BO series, there's a phrase I say, pick up and turn on. I did remove the paper clip and it was dead quiet back there. And I was like, wonder why that is. Came to find out it was because the fan fried out. Well, the next day we were back there, but in a different area of the hospital, and at least at the start of the day. And then we did work our way back to that area of the hospital by the afternoon, and they were repairing the fan on that copy machine. Then the director of photography said, can we move this copy machine over a little bit because I need to get a light here. They unplugged it and moved it. I'm like, you unplugged it for the director of photography, but you wouldn't for the sound department? I was not very pleased about that. Regardless, they went ahead and they fixed the fan after a little while. When they plugged it back up, it started making noise again. I went and grabbed my paper clip. I jammed it back up. And that day it was fine. The next day when we were back there for our third and final day at that particular hospital, I went and jammed up the fan again. And by lunchtime, it had fried out the fan motor yet again. So I had fried out that fan motor twice in 3 days, because they did not want to turn the thing off, even though no one was using it because we had bought that area of the building and there was no patients or anything in that section of that wing of the hospital because they had been rerouted or put someplace else because we were shooting there. They still would not turn it off. So because of that, I don't even know how much it cost them, but it serves them right for trying to mess with the sound department when we wanted that fan off. Floating. Chris J asks, in an interview you did with Matt Price, you mentioned that you used to be a martial arts instructor. Have you ever had to use martial arts for anything? Okay, I will go ahead and answer that. I have had to use my martial arts 3 times in my life, and I've been doing it since I was single digits. The very first school I ever went to was a Shaolin Kung Fu school that also did Tai Chi. I originally was signed up for Tai Chi, but kids were taught Shaolin Kung Fu by the masters first. Once you hit an age of at least 16, then he would start teaching you Tai Chi. I guess he had learned over the years that kids did not want to learn movement slowly. They would rather just punch and kick and roll and do everything else. So he taught us that. After about 2 years of going to the class, I was pretty proficient in it. Now, at the time, I went to a Catholic school, and this is back in the 80s when people didn't really seem to care a whole lot as long as you were behaving yourself. And me and 2 other of my friends used to practice and spar, obviously light impact. We didn't go for the face or anything like that, but we would go for the legs, torso, chest, that kind of thing with light contact. And we would spar each other all day during our lunch break after we would eat and then went outside. Now, that did get a lot of attention from people, curious as to why we were always doing that. But we enjoyed it because we were martial arts, students and practiced it and that kind of thing. Very, very interested. And one time, there was a whole bunch of kids that would also play basketball, about 50 feet or so up the hill. And sometimes the basketball would come roll down the hill and it would be thrown, we would throw it back or whatever. Sometimes we would just kick it back to them if it was far away. And there was this one kid named Matt. He was a grade above me who did not like uh us kicking the basketball. He was like, "Don't kick the ball." Well, he had told us that a few times. And I went ahead and was like, tired of the ball coming down there, and I'd run and catch it and then I'd kick it back. Well, this one day, Matt was not having it. He starts charging at me and starts running at me. He jumps into a fighting stance and starts throwing kicks and punches. Now, my instructor had said, the master that was my teacher had said, "I don't want to hear that you've gotten into fights in school. I teach you this stuff. I don't want to hear that you're using it because if you do, I'm not going to be happy with you and I may end your training." I didn't want that to happen. I took it very seriously. And so when Matt started throwing punches and kicks at me, I simply started blocking. And when I realized that he wasn't going to stop, I start backing up and blocking more and more. He never once got through my defenses, but I turn and start running like, "Dude, leave me alone." And I was expecting a teacher to stop and break it up. She never did, or none of the teachers that were on duty out there did. So after a while, I stopped and I turned around and went back to blocking, assuming that eventually he would get tired and stop. Now, I was, I think, about seventh grade at the time, maybe sixth grade. So I was only about 11, maybe 12. And I continued to block. And like I said, never once did he get through my defenses. And finally, he did run out of air and started breathing too heavy. He stopped and he kind of gave a smile like, he got the better of me and then walked away. And I was just like, okay, what was that about? All I did was kick the ball back at you. It's not that big of a deal. And I turn and walk away. And a bunch of my classmates are like, "Dude, you let him kick your butt?" I'm like, "No, I blocked every one of his attacks." He's like, "No, man, you didn't get one punch in or one kick in. You could, you're this martial art, you're ninja boy or whatever, and you can't even defend yourself." I'm like, "I blocked. He didn't get through me, my attacks one or my defense one time." And they're like, "You even ran from him." I'm like, "Yeah, because I don't want to get into a fight." Anyway, they continue to make fun of me to the point where me being a kid, I started crying because I was like, "This is so frustrating. They're not listening to me." So obviously that didn't go over very well. The basketball players were like, "Ha ha ha, you kicked Ninja Boy's buddies over there crying." And I'm like, that wasn't the way it was. So that's one time in my life that I used it. And that was just a stupid little thing on the playground. But that's me being completely honest about having used it. And again, I blocked everything or jammed him by, he would throw a kick. And if it was a low kick, I would, throw a knee into his kick. If not, I would block it with my arms. So that's one time. Another time was right before I turned 21. I was in New Orleans, and my mom and I were staying at the Bourbon Orleans hotel on Bourbon Street. Now, one of the things that I would sometimes do is my mom would go on a lot of business trips, and she would say, "You know what? I'm going to have a hotel room. If you want, you can come along. I'll fly you out there. You can stay in the hotel with me, and then during the day, explore, do whatever you want to." And she would usually give me $100 or whatever and say, "Go explore, wherever we were. If it was Chicago, it would be I would go to the Water Tower. I'd go to the Sears Tower. I would go to the Science Museum Industry, whatever the case may be." In New Orleans, I would just roam up and down Bourbon Street or whatever else. But being 20 and about 2 months away from being 21, I was too young to do really anything interesting in New Orleans. But that didn't stop me from going and trying to go in places. Now, one night, my mom said, there's got to be a place nearby here that we can get some milk because we didn't have any. We got like one little carton when we first got there, but we had to have milk for cereal. So what she said is, find a place nearby where you can get some milk. There was I think it was the A&P or some sort of a place, but I remember walking around Bourbon Street, looking around and not seeing any place. And then I asked someone, "Is there a grocery store or someplace I can get some milk?" And they said, "Yeah, just go down here, go down here, go down here." I said, "Cool, thanks." I walked down and there was an alley. I look down at the alley and I don't see anybody. This is probably about midnight. And I'm looking around. I'm like, well, there's a dumpster down there. There's not a whole lot. I don't see anybody. I turn and look all around me. I don't see anybody. And I walk down the alley. I get around the corner and continue to walk until I find that particular grocery store that it was mentioned to me. On my way back with my half gallon of milk, maybe it was a gallon, I can't remember exactly, but I went back and I had to go back through that alley. And I looked at it again, looked around, and I said, I don't see anybody yet again. I'm going to go ahead and walk down that alley. As soon as I started walking down the alley, I started hearing footsteps. Someone walking at the exact same time I was taking a step. And I didn't want to turn around and look because God only knows who this person's going to be after midnight, could have a gun or whatever else. So I just decided to continue to walk and play dumb to it. And the milk was in my left hand. So as I was walking and I hear these footsteps get closer and closer, so the person was taking longer steps than me. I knew this person was not a friend. And I had heard a story that my dad had been in New Orleans with my mom years and years ago when she was pregnant with me. And he was mugged on the streets of New Orleans late night. Now, I didn't want that to happen to me, obviously. And by then I had been doing martial arts for quite a few years. So as the person got closer, I heard their footsteps get really, really close, and I felt like the person was just about to lunge and grab me. And at that point, I stepped on my right foot. I just turned back and I threw a low side kick at knee level. And I happened to make direct contact with the person's knee. And I felt it go backwards and I felt a pop. And then I followed straight around with a reverse punch right to the philtrum. The philtrum happens to be a bone right here. People always say go for the nose. The nose is cartilage. You break a nose, it's going to bleed and whatever else, it will set and be whatever else. But if you think about the design of your face, there's a bone that goes across both of the sides here, and then there's a bone that connects up over here. The philtrum is this point right here in the very, very middle. And if you were to punch square into the philtrum, what it can do is press that bone inwards, which can snap outwards. And if you snaps there, there's a potential that it could also break one of these or both. Don't know. But what I do know is I did land a punch square into the philtrum because when I popped the knee, the person arched forward. And when that happened, they flew right into my reverse punch. As soon as that happened, I turned and I ran the opposite direction, the way I was going to begin with. And I'm hearing this person wailing and yelling and screaming in pain. So that was one time also that I don't know what was going to happen, but what I do know is that person was not a friend. And if I were to guess, I would say, if nothing else, I probably maybe snapped their knee. If I didn't snap the knee, I at least probably made them limp for a couple of days because it probably like put torque on the ACL or something. But whatever else, I really don't care because I wasn't mugged. The last time was, I think I had just earned my 2nd degree black belt, if memory serves. And this is in Jeet Kune style Taekwondo. And I was driving home from the Rocky Horror Picture Show where I used to be head of security and one of the and the pit boss, which was the person that's in charge of the crew. The cast I was a member of is Lips Down on Dixie. And I think it was like 3 a.m. and I was driving back from Atlanta. And I was driving through the town of Scottdale. And I came across this traffic light that normally was green, but for whatever reason, it was red. And I kept my eyes forward because I saw someone in the left side of my eye that was trying to get my attention. And they were waving their hands around or whatever else, and I just ignored it. Now, I had music on, and I was like, great. I wish I would have not had it on quite as loud as it was because I was thinking to myself, I need to be able to hear this person. So I did turn it down just a little bit and did so in a way that it wouldn't be as conspicuous. It wouldn't be as obvious. Now, the person came over, started tapping on my window, waving their hands around, and I ignored them which this is very weird for me because normally when I've gotten in my car in the past, I always lock the door. For some reason, that night I didn't. And so this person, in their infinite wisdom, decided to open up my driver's side door. I don't know why. I don't know who this person was, but what I did do is, since I had my right foot on the brake at that point, I launched over my left shoulder and did a reverse punch right to their stomach. And because the person like opened up my door and was stepping in. And so all I did was I turned and reverse punch right into their stomach. And I heard the person go, "Oh," and knock the wind out of them. At that point, even though the light was red and there was nobody around, I slammed my foot on the gas and went along my merry way. Those are the 3 times in my life I've ever had to use any of the martial arts skills I've acquired. I don't claim to be the best in the world. I don't claim that I am a great fighter or anything like that. Just because you have earned black belts does not mean you're invincible by any means. It just means that you have, learned certain skills and have achieved certain rankings. But it doesn't mean that you are this indestructible being that is fully able of, fending off a mugger or an attacker or whatever. I still consider it to be luck in all those, in the 2 latter cases, in New Orleans and in Scottsdale. And that's one of those things where anything could happen. I could be approaching somebody else and have a totally different circumstance and not end up, as lucky as I was in the past. And that's one of those things where it's to chance and whatever. Now, normally right now, I don't go into places where there's a whole lot of opportunity for that kind of thing. I don't normally go out late at night unless it's someplace around the corner, and I usually am just getting food and I stay in my car, or I go to some place that's going to be under 24-hour surveillance. Like I'll go to a place and get groceries in the middle of the night if we need something. But I usually try to steer clear of dangerous places for obvious reasons. But anyway, so those are the 3 times that I've ever had to defend myself using my martial arts. So there you have it. Another episode of the Sound Speeds podcast in the can. If you have any questions that you would like me to answer in any of the segments, then, send me an email at soundspeedspodcast@yahoo.com. If you would like to submit a voiceover outro to take over my outro with your own voice, then send it to the same email. But for right now, thanks for listening, and I will see you next week. If you'd like to ask a question for the Wrong Answers Only segment or submit a suggestion for the floating segment, then send an email to soundspeedspodcast@yahoo.com. If you'd like to showcase your voiceover talents by saying this outro, make sure it sounds good, doesn't exceed 20 seconds, and send it to the same email. Hit subscribe for more content both here and on SoundSpeeds.